There is a clay tablet held in a private collection outside Istanbul that no reputable museum will publicly display. It was recovered from a site south of the ancient city of Uruk in the winter of 1948, hand-carried out of the country by a Swiss antiquities dealer and passed through 4 owners before disappearing into what auction records simply call a European estate. The tablet is not remarkable in size or age. What makes it remarkable is the single line of Akkadian text carved along its upper edge, a line that the first 3 translators refused to publish. The line reads, "In the closest English rendering, do not speak these. Do not sing these. Do not hum these." What follows on the tablet is a list. 7 entries. 7 sounds the Sumerians cataloged as forbidden. Not forbidden by law. Not forbidden by custom. Forbidden because, according to the tablet itself, each sound summons something. And each thing summoned is described in language that reads less like myth and more like a warning left by people who had already made the mistake of testing what they were writing down. For nearly 70 years, the tablet was known only through photographs and partial rubbings. The first complete translation was finished in 2019 by a linguist working alone in a private study, and the document he produced was not published in any academic journal. It circulated privately, among a small circle of researchers who take Sumerian material seriously, and it is from that document that we have the 7 sounds and the 7 things they call. What you are about to hear is the tablet's own list, in the tablet's own order, with the tablet's own descriptions of what each sound does when it is made. I'm going to walk you through all 7, and I am going to tell you what the tablet says happens when a human being, knowingly or unknowingly, produces any one of them, because the tablet is very clear on one point. It does not matter if you know what the sound means. It does not matter if you intend to summon anything. The sound itself is the summoning, and the thing on the other side does not care whether you meant to call it. It only cares that the call went out. Let us begin with the first sound. The first sound is the one the tablet says has already been made, many times, in the last 100 years, by people who had no idea what they were doing. Described on the tablet as a low, sustained tone, the first sound is produced by the human throat, at a pitch just below what most modern instruments are tuned to reproduce. The tablet does not give a frequency in numbers, but the description is specific. It says the sound must be held without breath break, for the length of time it takes a small stone to fall from an outstretched hand to the ground. It says the sound must originate from the belly, not the chest, and must be shaped by a slightly open mouth. And it says the sound, when made correctly, cannot be heard by the person making it. The person feels it, but their own ears do not register it. This detail alone identifies what the Sumerians were describing. They were describing infrasound, a frequency below conscious human hearing, which the body registers as pressure, as unease, as a presence in the chest and abdomen. Modern acoustic research has documented that infrasound in the range of 7 to 19 Hz produces measurable psychological effects, including feelings of dread, of being watched, of not being alone in the room. The tablet says the sound calls what it names as the watcher at the threshold, and it describes the watcher in a way that is difficult to read even now. The watcher, the tablet says, is not a spirit and not a god. It is a thing that lives in the boundary between one place and another. This entity does not enter rooms. It stands in doorways. Where one thing becomes another, it stands. And when the low sound is made, the watcher turns. It does not come closer. It simply becomes aware. And once it is aware of a human, the tablet says, it does not forget. The Sumerian priests who cataloged this sound were not warning against summoning something monstrous. They were warning against being noticed. Because the tablet says the watcher, once it knows a person exists, will attend every threshold that person crosses for the rest of that person's life. Every doorway, any gate, every transition from sleep to waking, and every transition from one room to another. And the tablet says this is why so many people, in the years after making the sound without knowing, report the feeling of something standing just behind them as they pass through a door. The tablet closes the first entry with a single sentence. The watcher was not there before you sang. And before we go further, I need to pause for a second, because what I am about to tell you gets significantly darker. And I realized a while ago that some of this cannot be fully explained in a video format. The complete decoding of all 7 sounds, the exact pitch descriptions, the tablet notations, the translated passages, and the specific instructions the tablet gives for what to do if one of them has already been made in your presence, I put all of it into a written document. It is linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Now let us continue. The second sound is stranger and simpler than the first. Described on the tablet as a sharp, high, single syllable. It is produced by the tongue striking the roof of the mouth while air is drawn inward rather than pushed outward. The syllable itself is not written on the tablet. The Sumerian scribes refused to record it in cuneiform and instead left the space blank, with only the phonetic instructions for how the mouth must move to produce it. This is significant. The tablet contains dozens of other forbidden names and forbidden words, all of which are written out, sometimes with warnings. But the second sound is the only entry where the sound itself is deliberately withheld. The scribes were willing to describe the shape of the mouth. They were not willing to write the sound down, even in dead language, on baked clay, sealed in a jar, buried in a wall. What the sound calls is described in the tablet as the one who counts. And the description of what the one who counts does is unsettling in a very specific way. The tablet says the one who counts does not harm the person who summoned it. It does not appear, does not speak, does not manifest in any way the person can perceive. What it does is begin counting. It counts the person's remaining breaths, remaining heartbeats, remaining hours of life. And the tablet says the count, once begun, cannot be interrupted. The person who summoned it will feel nothing. But from that moment onward, every breath they take is subtracted from a total only the one who counts knows. The tablet says this is why the Sumerian priests, when they suspected the second sound had been made near a dying person, would enter the room in complete silence and refuse to speak until the person had passed. They believed additional sound would be added to the count as an interruption, and any interruption would accelerate what the count was doing. The tablet does not say the one who counts is malevolent. The tablet says the one who counts is simply doing what it exists to do. It counts. And once it begins counting a specific human, it will not stop until the count reaches 0. The final line of the second entry reads, "When you hear the tongue strike inward, leave the room, and do not return to it until 3 sunrises have passed." The third sound is the one the tablet spends the most time describing, which is significant because the tablet is otherwise extraordinarily compressed. Most entries occupy 3 or 4 lines. The third occupies nearly a full column. The sound itself is described as a soft, breathy, almost whispered vowel, held for the length of a slow exhalation, at a pitch matching the natural resting hum of the human vocal cords when the person is not speaking. In other words, the tablet is describing the sound a person makes when they exhale audibly through a slightly open mouth. A sigh. A soft, unguarded, unintentional sigh. The sound a person makes when they sit down alone at the end of a long day and finally allow their shoulders to drop. According to the tablet, this sound, when made in a certain state, calls what it names as the one who listens for tiredness. The description of this entity is where the tablet becomes difficult to read. The one who listens for tiredness, the tablet says, is drawn to the moment a human being stops defending themselves. It is not drawn to sleep, nor is it drawn to unconsciousness. What draws it is the moment of surrender that precedes rest, the moment when a human being releases the tension they have been holding all day. The tablet says this entity does not attack, it does not possess. What it does is enter the space the tiredness has opened. And once it is inside that space, it begins to feed. Not on the person's energy, not on the person's soul, on the person's willingness to try again the next day. The tablet says a person who has been fed on by the one who listens for tiredness will wake the next morning with a specific and recognizable feeling. They will feel that everything they did the day before was pointless, that everything they are about to do that day is pointless, and that the effort of continuing is greater than the reward of continuing. There will be no clear cause, no memory of anything having gone wrong, only the pointlessness. And the tablet says this feeling, if the one who listens is allowed to feed for many nights in a row, becomes permanent. It becomes the person. The tablet says this is why the Sumerian priests taught their students to control the audible sigh, not to suppress tiredness, but to release it silently, through the nose, without producing the vowel that the entity recognizes as the invitation. The last line of the third entry reads, "The sigh is the door, close it." The fourth sound is one of the few entries where the sound is not made by the mouth. Rather than a vocalization, the tablet describes it as a rhythmic tapping, produced by the fingertips against a hard, hollow surface at a specific speed. The speed is described as the pace of a heart beating slightly faster than at rest, not a resting heart, not a running heart, the pace of a heart that has just been startled but is not yet calmed. The tablet is specific about the surface. It must be hard, hollow, and resonant, wood on a table, bone against clay, fingernail against a door frame. The tablet says 3 taps are not enough, 5 taps are not enough. The count that summons is 7, produced without pause between them, at the slightly startled heartbeat pace. What the 7 taps call is described in the tablet as the one who arrives when called. And the description of the one who arrives is the shortest of any entry on the tablet, 2 lines. It reads, "The one who arrives when called is not a friend. This entity comes because it has been asked to come, and it stays because you have not asked it to leave." That is the entire description. What the tablet spends its remaining space on is the instruction for what to do if the 7 taps have been made accidentally. The person must, within the same hour, produce 3 deliberate loud sounds: a shout, or a hand clap, or a struck object. These 3 sounds are described as the dismissal. The tablet says the one who arrives, if not dismissed within the hour, will remain in the space where the taps were made for a length of time proportional to the strength of the resonance. A weak resonance holds it for days. A strong resonance holds it for years. Later archaeological work has confirmed carved patterns of this kind on door frames from at least 4 Sumerian sites. The final line of the 4th entry reads, "Do not tap. If you have tapped, dismiss." Before we move on to the next sound, stop for a second. What you just heard about the 4th sound is the part that changes everything. But it only makes sense when you see it written out next to the original Sumerian notation, the tap count, also the heartbeat pace, and the dismissal sequence. It is all in the document linked below. Take 5 seconds right now, grab it, and then come back, because what comes next builds directly on it. The link is in the description. QR code is on your screen. The 5th sound the tablet lists is the one most modern readers will find hardest to accept, because the 5th sound is not one a person can avoid making. The tablet describes it as the sound of laughter, but not all laughter, a specific kind. The tablet is careful to distinguish between what it calls the laughter of joy, which is described as a rising, breath-filled sound produced with the whole body, and what it calls the laughter of surprise, and what it calls the laughter of relief. None of these summon anything. The forbidden laughter is described in the tablet as a sharp, low, single burst produced without joy, without surprise, and without relief. It is the laugh a person makes when something is not funny, but they laugh anyway. Sometimes the laugh a person makes when they are alone and something absurd has happened and there is no one to share it with. Or the laugh a person makes when they read something painful and their body reacts before their mind can suppress the reaction. The tablet calls this the empty laugh. And the tablet says the empty laugh calls what it names as the one who mocks. The one who mocks, the tablet says, is drawn to the specific frequency of a human being laughing at something that was not funny. And what the one who mocks does, once it has been called, is begin producing more opportunities for that same kind of laugh. The tablet says a person who has produced the empty laugh in the presence of the one who mocks will begin, in the days that follow, encountering an unusual number of small, absurd, painful things. Minor humiliations, slightly embarrassing moments, small failures observed by others, not disasters, nothing catastrophic, just a slow, steady accumulation of moments that produce the empty laugh again. And each time the empty laugh is produced, the one who mocks grows stronger, and the frequency of the small absurd humiliations increases. The tablet describes this as a feedback loop, a trap that the person walks into by laughing, and continues walking deeper into every time they laugh again. The tablet says the only way to break the loop is to refuse the laugh, to feel the absurd, painful moment, and to remain silent in the face of it. The tablet warns that this is extremely difficult, because the empty laugh is often involuntary. It escapes before the person knows it is happening. The final line of the 5th entry reads, "When the world hands you something not funny, do not perform amusement. Amusement is the meal." The 6th sound the tablet lists is the one that unsettles modern readers most, because the 6th sound is a sound humans make constantly, without thinking, and without any awareness of what the Sumerians said it does. The tablet describes the 6th sound as the sound of a person speaking their own name aloud, in a room where they are alone, not writing the name, nor thinking the name, not hearing the name from someone else. Speaking the name out loud in a room where no one else is present to hear it. The tablet says this act, which seems harmless and even meaningless, is one of the most consequential summonings in the entire 7-sound catalog. What it calls is described in the tablet as the one who wears the name. And the description of the one who wears the name is where the tablet becomes genuinely disturbing to read. The one who wears the name, the tablet says, is not a copy of the person. It is not a double, nor is it a shadow. It is something that takes the sound of the spoken name and constructs from that sound a version of the person that exists only in spaces the person is not currently occupying. When the person is in one room, the one who wears the name is in every other room the person has recently occupied. When the person is awake, The one who wears the name is present in every space where the person is remembered by others. The tablet says this is why, in ancient Sumerian practice, a person's true name was almost never spoken aloud, even by the person themselves. A person had a public name, used by others, and a person had a private true name, which was known only to the person and, in some traditions, to a single trusted priest. The private true name was written on a small clay token, sealed and buried. It was never spoken. The tablet says a person who repeatedly speaks their own name aloud in solitude creates, over years, a fully formed second self, which exists in all the places the person is not, and which begins, slowly, to be experienced by others as the person. The tablet says the people in the person's life will begin, without knowing why, to remember interactions that did not happen. They will remember the person saying things the person did not say, doing things the person did not do, being places the person was not. The one who wears the name is filling in the gaps. And the tablet says, over enough years, the one who wears the name becomes more real to the people around the person than the person themselves. The final line of the 6th entry reads, "Your name is a door. Do not open it alone." The 7th sound is the shortest entry on the tablet, and also the most difficult to translate. Its scribes appear to have written it in a hurry, or under pressure, and the final line trails off in a way that suggests the writer was interrupted, or chose to stop. Described as a wordless, tuneless, low humming, the 7th sound is produced with the mouth closed, sustained for longer than a full minute. The tablet says the humming does not have to be at any particular pitch. It does not have to follow any melody. What matters is that it is sustained, unbroken, and produced without conscious purpose. It is the sound a person makes when they are doing something else with their hands, and their mouth begins to hum on its own, and they do not stop it. The tablet says this humming, when it goes on long enough, calls what it names simply as the last one. The tablet gives no further description. It does not say what the last one looks like, what it does, or whether it is a spirit, a god, a shadow, or a thing with no category. It says only that the last one is the last that will ever be called by that person, because once the last one arrives, no further summoning is possible. The person who called it will never again produce any of the other 6 sounds, not because the person is prevented, because the person will no longer want to. The tablet's final line, before it trails off, reads, "When the last one comes, the humming stops, and you understand why the others were only warnings." And then the tablet ends. There is no 8th sound. No further explanation follows. There is no instruction for what to do if the 7th sound has been made. The scribes did not write any. What we can piece together from other Sumerian sources that reference this same tablet is that the 7 sounds were understood by the priesthood as a single catalog with a single purpose. The first 6 sounds were warnings about summonings that could still be undone, presences that could still be dismissed. The 7th sound was different. It was not a warning. It was a description of what happens at the end of a life during which the first 6 have been made too many times. The last one, in this reading, is not summoned by the humming. Instead, the humming is what a person naturally begins to produce when the last one is already arriving. The Sumerians did not fear the 7th sound. They feared what its emergence in a person meant. It meant the count had reached its end, that every previous summoning had been paid for. It meant the final door was opening, and the person had, by their own life of small sounds and casual invitations, opened it. The tablet ends where the humming would end, in silence. And the silence, according to the commentary tradition that grew around this tablet, was understood as the sound of every previous presence leaving. Because when the last one arrives, all the others depart. The watcher at the threshold turns away. One who counts stops counting, the one who mocks loses interest, and the person stands in a room that is, for the first time in many years, completely empty. And what the last one is, the Sumerians would not say. The tablet is silent, and so are we. What remains, at the end of this catalog, is a question the tablet does not answer directly but seems to imply. If 7 ordinary sounds, produced without intent, sometimes without awareness, can call 7 distinct presences into a human life, then what does an ordinary human life sound like from the other side? The tablet gives a fragment of an answer. It says, in a line near the top, that the world humans move through is not silent to the things that listen. That world is loud, constantly loud. Filled with the small unconscious sounds humans make when they are alone, tired, startled, amused by things that are not funny, humming without knowing they are humming. Every one of these, the tablet says, is a signal being sent. And every signal is received on the other side by something already listening. The tablet does not name the source of the 7 presences. It does not say whether they were created by human sound or whether they existed before humans and simply learned to listen. It only insists on one thing: the presences are drawn by sound, and the sounds are made, whether the person intends to or not, whether the person believes any of this is real or not. Belief is not the mechanism. Intention is not the mechanism. The sound is the mechanism. There is a second commentary tradition attached to this tablet, preserved in a single fragment now held in Baghdad, which suggests the original document listed not 7 sounds but 9. 2 were deliberately removed from later copies because the risk of preserving them, even as warnings, outweighed the benefit. Which 2? The fragment does not say. What they called the fragment does not say. But it closes with a line that has haunted every subsequent scholar who has read it. If you have ever felt watched in a room where no one was watching, if you have ever felt counted in a moment you were only breathing, if you have ever felt something enter the space you had just made by finally letting go, then you already know at least one of the sounds they removed, and you have already made it. The Sumerians did not believe ignorance was protection. They believed the opposite. The sounds most likely to be made were the sounds made unknowingly, and the presences most likely to attach were the presences called by sounds no one thought to notice. This is why the tablet exists. Not to describe a distant danger. To describe a danger that is already, at this moment, in every room where a human sits alone and makes a sound they do not think about. The 7 sounds are not exotic. They are ordinary. A sigh at the end of the day, the tap of a finger, half a laugh at something not funny, a muttered name in an empty apartment, the low hum while cleaning a dish. Each of these, the tablet says, is a door. And the doors are, at every moment, either closed or slightly open. And what is on the other side is not indifferent to being noticed. It has been waiting. The tablet ends. Its commentaries end. The scribes are dust. But the sounds continue. And somewhere right now a person is making one of them in a room they believe is empty. And the room is not empty. It was never empty. It has only been quiet enough that the presence has not yet had reason to speak. And now you know.